Getting the early numbers could be the key to success when betting on the NFL. That's why we're here to react to the pinnacle openers and analyse where the market might move. Welcome to the opening line. Hello and welcome to the opening line, and we are just 2 games away from the Super Bowl. 2 great matchups to analyse this week and plenty to unpack. So fortunately, our NFL betting experts are on hand to share their insight. Welcome to Eric Eager and Andy Molitor. And to start things off, we'll go with our, what do we call it, cheers and jeers last week.
Yeah, we're going to get sued by TV Guide if there's still
Eric, you can kick us off this week. Who impressed and who disappointed you from the divisional round?
I mean, I think, Buffalo was the team. I think that I was the lone person on this last week. I don't know if, they played well. I don't think that they did much, to strike fear in the eyes of Kansas City. But they did come through, so that was nice. That being said, anybody who teased that up, prayers for you if you had Baltimore in that teaser. Along with Green Bay. And then the late line move Sunday was crazy. Kansas City all the way down to what was a flat 8 by the time it was over with, and then Tampa down to 2.5. That was one, that opened up a, sort of a Wong teaser at the very end that ended up hitting despite Chad Henne having to play for Kansas City. So it was a fun weekend. Hopefully Mahomes plays this week.
And Andy, how about you?
Yeah, jeers to the box score in the Ravens-Buffalo game, because if you did bet for the Ravens any way, shape, or form, just maybe don't go look at that box score because you're going to be sad. Truthfully, the same thing with Tampa, New Orleans. And, it's easy to say, well, if they didn't turn the ball over all those times, I mean, that's part of the game. But, I mean, that game was much closer to probably where the original line should have been. If you go look at everything and you turn the ball over 4 times in the divisional round, likely aren't going to win. So I think that the Saints in general were kind of disappointing, although, and I've said this numerous times already this week, it was one of those where Drew and I looked at each other at halftime and said, who would we rather have win to see next week if we're just a football fan? It's like, I'd rather see Tampa. Like, the Saints are a better team, not by a lot, but I kind of will be cheering for Tampa to get this done anyway. So, and I guess from an impressing me standpoint, and maybe Eric will have a take on this, I don't know where I stand on LaFleur because it's hard to judge. It's hard to separate the quarterback and the coach sometimes. It's like, especially with last year over, producing whatever you want to call it, their Pythagorean expectations so much, and teams, people lining up to fade him this year and coming back and playing just as well. Rodgers playing better despite them giving them nothing in the draft class. They were able to, I'm not sure how many snaps the entire draft class got. So I think I'm going to have to finally just buy into LaFleur as at least an above average coach who can be, you can say, oh, well, he has Aaron Rodgers. We've seen lots of really good quarterbacks wasted by bad coaches. So I think LaFleur is finally impressing me. Good offense beats a good offense beats a good defense if it's run properly.
Correct. I mean, don't you think the theme of the week this week was when offense executes, defense doesn't matter? Like, you had New Orleans, who I know Rufus really liked all year, and I think almost anybody analytically. I mean, we had them as second in our power rankings before this week. And, they were a robust defense, and they played really well the other day. Brady made some mistakes, but ultimately, they overcame a lot of Brady overcame a lot of Arians' issues, as well as being helped by New Orleans. New Orleans didn't execute, and so Tampa Bay's defense looked like the best defense in that game, even though I think fundamentally that wasn't the case. LA, their coach was so good at defense that he got the Chargers job almost like 3 hours later. But Green Bay's offense executed. LaFleur has done a great job of using all 4 downs when necessary. I think we have him as 4th in our offensive play caller rankings. So, really no match. LA was no match there for Green Bay, and sort of, was trending that way in Kansas City before Mahomes got hurt.
Yeah, that game wasn't looking like it was going to be very good. And the fact that it was it wasn't fun that's how it became a close game, but I guess in the end it was better than just not watching the second half at all.
We still had some dubious calls, should we say, but I'm just glad that we didn't have a Twitter feed streaming with prospective NFL coaches saying that this call should have been made and that call should have been made. But we've obviously had a couple of fallers in terms of futures tickets, and I think you guys on here and Rufus, who normally joins us, would have been maybe more hopeful than yourself, Andy. You weren't expecting much from the Rams, but do you think you kind of got a fair shake in terms of how things turned out with that ticket?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an easy path, just who they had to face. And I was hoping they were, at the time that I added some of that, they were kind of in line to win the division. I needed some things to shake out. And one of the legs I didn't expect to not shake out was the Jets game. Like that was the end of that ticket for me. I needed the Rams in the 2 seed. The Rams had an outside shot at the 1 seed. Obviously I feel a lot better about that ticket if they're able to win the division, possibly pass up New Orleans for the 2 seed. Even, at a certain point it was, this team could win out and take over the bye spot. The bye being massive this year with just getting to host, and depending on who you are. I'm not sure what Los Angeles. In fact, I'm pretty sure Los Angeles wouldn't have been allowing fans. So, without getting political or anything, I guess I'm sort of glad that some of the teams that have been hosting have been able to have a small contingent of fans in the stands. It's crazy how loud Buffalo sounded, and maybe it's just because I'm not used to it. I haven't watched a game with like 70,000 fans for so long that even just 6,000 nut jobs from Buffalo sounded crazy loud. Like kudos to the fans in the stands. Like that was good. They were very loud at times. So I'm happy that we'll see more of that this weekend.
Amen. Yeah, that's a cool little thing, and I think that they're being, relatively safe. Well, and there was those photos of people partying in Green Bay right outside the stadium. Like you can't control that, right? So, but the having people separated in the stands, is something that I think is relatively okay and adds a little bit of home field advantage. We'll see how much that affects things in the championship round. Kansas City's had about that many fans every game this year. Green Bay is not. Green Bay was a fanless experience until the playoffs. But
you mentioned 2 teams there, Eric, and we're talking about futures tickets. We had a chat with Rufus, and it was all irrelevant, the New Orleans money line rollover and whatnot that we were discussing. But 2 of the teams that you were talking about were Green Bay and Kansas City. How are you feeling about those now? And are you beginning to think of sort of a hedge, or are you just going to see those through?
Well, I think when that 4 was available with Tampa and you could see sort of the money coming in on it, I did grab some of that. I think now that it's down to a flat, it's not quite a flat 3 yet, but it's trending towards that. I think I want you guys' opinion on this. Is this like how everybody used to make fun of 538 and how everybody used to make fun of ESPN, BPI or whatever it's called.
We still do.
In Matthew Peabody. They make fun of Matthew Peabody.
Yeah. And with the sort of like handicapping the playoffs with LeBron, when LeBron used to play for the Cavs, and it was like, the whole season they'd have these metrics, and then they would show a price for the NBA playoffs that were totally off because LeBron, like there's a regime shift, right? Are people doing that with Brady right now? Because from what I can tell with the fundamentals, like Green Bay, I think 3 would be a little short. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually above 3 on that one, just from a pure numbers, and Tampa's looked good. I don't know. Are you saying we're paying a Brady tax? Like
that's what I think.
So. Are we paying a Brady tax? And I can buy that because there is so much narrative, and also too, I guess I'd like to speak to Buzz Marco in here. Like I wonder what sort of money you take. Is the money a different kind of money once you get to the playoffs because there's so few games and you get so much public or bad money just flooding into some of these markets earlier in the week than people would normally be betting. So I'm not sure why we're seeing some of the moves. The game that opened 3, I make almost 4. The game that opened 3.5, 4, I make almost 3. So I'm close enough to these markets where I'm not excited about jumping in, but I can buy there's been a Kansas City tax. There's certainly taxes on big name quarterbacks, but at the same time, you have Aaron Rodgers at home. Those taxes can offset.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of so again, this is completely narrative driven. I think my number for this game, let me look here, is 3.5 for Green Bay, Tampa Bay. Yeah,
what's your home field? What's your home field for this? I think my number
1.
Yeah. Okay. That's
that's
not a lot.
No,
especially Tampa going to Green Bay. It's going to be like 25 degrees. Tampa, what is it? Probably 70s.
Yeah, I mean, like my rationale is that Brady's the most important player for Tampa Bay, and he has played a number of these games before. And the coaching differential in this game, like last week I said Bruce Arians was the most overmatched coach in the entire playoffs. And I think that chasm grew, right, with them moving on one round. I mean, he's given up, I think, volume-wise, the most win probability on punting decisions as anybody in the
Baldwin tweet, the Ben Baldwin tweet. I believe you used that in your article too. I saw this morning or yesterday, but basically that was were those cumulative, like all the fourth downs, like the win probability you've given up or in the playoffs over the cumulative, essentially bad calls. Or was it, could you gain points by making a good call in those two? I'm gonna have to talk to Ben about that, I guess. But it was staggering how high, like they were dead last.
Yeah, I think it's only the losses. And Arians, to his credit. So this is where I get, again, this is narrative driven, but I do try to capture these things in some of my models. Arians went for 4th and 1 at his own 34 when they were down, I think 6, right? And they converted, and then 2 drives later, it must have been. It was 4th and 1 from his own 33, and he punted. And I'm just like, I just need some coherence in some of these things. I don't agree with being a run first team, but like the Ravens are a run first team, and sort of almost everything sort of makes sense when that you understand that that's their axiom system. Like I have no clue like what Bruce Arians is thinking. And to me that's tricky. And I think Brady has made up for a lot of that. And I think obviously Noise has too with last week's game and all the turnovers. But in this championship game, I just don't know if that's going to work.
I mean, I think short one versus long one, right? For the quarterback sneak, going for it. And plus, once you've done that once, I think there was knowledge that it was coming the first time anyway. But the whole Brady being used to the cold. Okay, if I'm out in Colorado and I'm skiing, and suddenly, if it's in the middle of the winter, I'm coming from Boston or wherever, it's cold. I'm used to the cold. If I move to the tropics, or if if it's in the middle of the summer, 80 degrees, suddenly, I go somewhere and it's 30 degrees. You're damn right I'm cold. Like I'm not acclimatized to that. I'm going to be just as cold as if I had never lived in the 30-degree place.
No, isn't that a similar? I mean, I guess Green Bay lives there all year, but they don't practice outside every day, right? Like, and they don't. I mean, they are only playing. I guess there's the home field advantage associated with the weather, but I don't think it's as stark as. I mean, they can simulate these things, right? Plus, the field is heated, like almost like. I don't know. As somebody who grew up playing football in Minnesota, it's a totally different thing when in an NFL stadium where the fields are heated and they have all the accommodations and stuff like that. I don't know, there's going to be weather in both of these games, right? With precipitation possibilities. Does that even the playing field, or does that make home field advantage grow for Green Bay?
Yeah, and the Bucks cold weather games were early, very early. It was Broncos and Bears were, October and September. They did play the Washington game a couple weeks ago, but the other away games were, it looks like, last week, obviously Dome, before that Lions Dome, Falcons Dome, before that Panthers in November. Like, they haven't played. I guess the only other cold weather game would have been the Giants game in early November. So I guess we're not the right kind of people to make judgment calls on how quick somebody acclimates themselves to being a warm weather person. Brady did say it though. He says my blood thinned out or whatever, how he called it.
Oh, yeah, he got soft.
I mean, I feel like I'm softer when I go on vacation. Like, if I spend 6 days in Cancun, I'm miserable when I have to go start my car in the airport. Like that. Well, that's the worst, is when you get back to Minnesota. So I can't imagine living in Tampa for that long.
What are you guys making home field then in this one?
Shade over 1.5. I'm getting near, but just because it is Green Bay, cold weather city. I'm not putting a lot of it like Brady is a warm weather quarterback. It's a cold weather game, and it's your home field, and you have fans. So I'm closer to 1.5.
By the way, I pulled up the because I remember back in 2007 when I was doing like lit review for economics professor back at Yale. I found this stuff about the home weather acclimatization effect. So I found this abstract from this article by Richard Borghese, University of South Florida in Tampa Bay, by the way.
It's Tampa's college.
Yeah. And basically they studied games. We test price efficiency in the NFL point spread betting market by examining the relationship between betting line forecast errors and game day temperatures for 5,463 NFL games from 1981 to 2004. Our main contribution to the existing literature is the identification of a mispriced acclimatization advantage associated with games played in extreme temperature conditions. Results suggest that game day temperature significantly affects team performance and that this information is not efficiently incorporated into bet prices. Now, it may be more efficiently incorporated into betting prices now, but that means it has an impact. And that's basically what the finding was here. And if I remember correctly, they looked at the difference between the city that a team was traveling to, the weather that week, and the weather they played in, versus the difference between, the team, versus the difference between the home team's weather that week and what it ended up, because if it was 70 degrees for the home team also, and then it suddenly went down to 30 degrees, I think Denver occasionally goes from 90 degrees down to 30, right? So that wouldn't be an advantage, but I don't remember exactly how large it is, but I mean, I'm using home field of 2 points basically here. And I think I might be a little low given the weather impact.
Yeah. And I guess, Sunday is actually going to be one of the better days as far as temperature here, right? Because you're looking at 21 Friday, 21 Saturday, 29 Sunday, but then you have the precipitation. Yeah. Tampa weather is in the low 70s, high 60s. So, I mean, would you categorize this as extreme?
This is definitely extreme for NFL. I mean, especially given that Green Bay, it's going to be like 20 degrees all week. It's not like players are just traveling in tunnels between home and, practice or whatever. They live there, I guess, during the season or around there, right? They have to get in their car and warm it up. And
No, you're right. I mean,
it's cold AF there. And so I think this is 40 plus degree difference for Tampa. 50 degrees between Green Bay and Tampa weather for the week. So,
but so if you have home field at 2 points, I mean, it's 3 minus 120. Is that short then?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I think even for me, like I said, I had home field as 1, and I didn't adjust it up for, what seemed to be dubious reasons now. But even then, I still like Green Bay. Does that mean the market is sort of, I mean, is this a New England with Tom Brady situation? Where most systems, I just think about the Rams Super Bowl, was it 2 years ago, where the books open LA at -2, -1.5, and then all the money came in on New England, and basically again, those aren't key numbers or anything, but right. People are sort of Brady is just you're paying a Brady tax. Are people paying are we seeing money coming in because of this Brady idea?
Think about the media.
So.
Think about the media you've seen.
Recency.
Yeah, the recency and the media narratives that have already trickled. It's Tuesday, and think about every stat we're seeing. We're not seeing, hey, here's a snapshot of how good of a season Rodgers has had. It's like, this is Brady's 14th conference championship game. Brady has more than this team has, and that, like, every single stat that people are popping out on social media is just about, man, Brady's been amazing for just crazy long time. And yeah, he has. Those are fair. Those aren't made up overfit stats. He's been on some amazing teams for a very long time, but maybe that is going to drive, some Bucs mania here.
Well, and it wasn't like the Bucs outplayed the Saints.
Right.
It was 4 turnovers. It was Breeze being Breeze being completely done. And if Winston had played in that game, maybe the Saints. If Winston had played the entire game, maybe the Saints win.
I mean, what the funniest thing about the Winston thing is, like, what's the worst thing that could happen if you have Jameis in the game? You turn the ball over 4 times.
Exactly.
It's like you get the same shit with another. So I agree with you. I don't like. And the other thing is Tampa. I'm sorry, but Washington gave Tampa a game in the first round too. Like, what was it? They closed 8, so I think they pushed, but like, it wasn't, Arians and, I think Bowles interviewing for head coaching jobs is also, I think, a distraction kind of thing. Like, there are some issues with Tampa that the only reason I took some of them at +4 was just as sort of a hedge with some of the futures I had with Green Bay. But at 3, I mean, especially if it gets to 3 minus 110, I mean, is that the best bet of the weekend?
I think it's a good bet. I don't think it's the best bet. Actually, my number with priors, I'm higher on Tampa with priors because of the Brady and because Rodgers was bad. Well, not bad. He just wasn't Rodgers the last few years as much as he usually is. But is 3.5, and without priors is Green Bay minus 5.1. So I like it. I don't love it, but at this point in the postseason, you're not going to have numbers that are way off. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But
we spoke about that though last year. We felt like we hadn't seen one that off in a long time. Like the Niners laying 7 on Green Bay. I just felt like it was an instant bet for both of us. And we talked about that. We had like 2 or 3 of those last postseason. And just, I think things have been tight this year. I just haven't fired on much this postseason at all. I don't know if it's a small sample. You're not having much.
You haven't gotten many upsets, right? I think Tampa was a team that even people who back New Orleans, were kind of, I even think people were a little bit hesitant about New Orleans last week. Like, there haven't been that many like upsets like Tennessee beating Baltimore, right? Like we all kind of knew Pittsburgh was weaker, right? So
Seattle,
Seattle was, whereas last year, I mean, you had the Tennessee thing, which threw everybody for a loop. Plus, they were a team who was very game script dependent. So they play a team like Baltimore, and they play right into what Tennessee does well. Whereas when they play Kansas City, it's sort of a fish out of, like, and then Green Bay too. Like the whole market thought the idea that Green Bay having the same price as Minnesota did the week before, because Green Bay swept, everybody thought like Green Bay was this like wildly underrated team. Whereas most people betting it were like, no, Green Bay is actually a 9-win team. And, that was kind of what you saw. But
just away from the side, I mean, it's obviously a hot topic of debate, but a couple of things maybe to kind of pull together there. We talk about the weather and this Brady tax. Now the total's actually gone up 2 points, and people might be listening thinking, well, if it's cold, surely they're going to struggle to bump that total up, or is it? Do you think people buying into the potential of Brady to put some points on the board? Have you guys any thoughts on the total as well?
Yeah, it is up to like 50. I'm not sure where it bottomed out. It's like 51 painted right now, it looks like. My main concern, and maybe it's a concern with Tampa in general as well, is the success of Leonard Fournette last week and the fact that Green Bay, everybody knows they are a little soft against the run. So I think it would almost be to Tampa's, disadvantage to – it might be to their disadvantage that he did have a half decent week, and they're going to continue to do that. If they said, "Oh, like playoff Lenny, that's a thing. Like that's fun. People are talking about us online." If they want to just keep with that, why are we doing that? They were given very short fields. They took advantage of it. They got the game. It wasn't gifted to them. They played well, but they took advantage of their short fields. They won the game. But if they think that's something they need to feature is Leonard Fournette, I think that hurts them from a side, and it hurts this total.
The total.
Yeah, I think it has moved around quite a bit. So it's actually come down. It went up and dropped down by 2 points now.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was that weather related, where sort of the forecast became more ominous.
Yeah, because it's only recently. So my guess would be, people have then bought into that idea of the cold weather dropping it down.
The other side of this, though, Andy, is that Green Bay, LA by design is a run enticing team. Tampa Bay is actually, I think, a little bit more old school in that they sort of start with the fronts and play coverage secondarily. So, and you see Vita Vea might play this week. Like there's a chance that Green Bay moves away from the run first team that they were last week, and become a drop back team, which I think helps the total, right? You want the ball in Rodgers' hands, more often than not. But that's again my guess. I'm not exactly sure if that's how they'll do it. If they'll be stubborn and run Jones, Dillon, and Williams into that front.
Yeah, hopefully they're not stubborn on that. And just his EPA per drop back, and you don't have to say like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is good, Devontae Adams is good, but yeah, if they smarten up and say, well, like we could run into the teeth of possibly Vita Vea, and I mean the linebackers played pretty well against the run. We could run against that, or there's Devontae Adams and Tanyan who's playing pretty well, and even Lazard is a deep threat at times. We have some decent receiving options, and we have a Hall of Fame quarterback. Why not just throw that again? Helps Green Bay as a side and probably pushes that up towards the total. So a lot of it's going to be probably dependent on game plans, and I think maybe a live betting opportunity there. If Green Bay seems pretty content to throw the ball in early downs, Green Bay team total over live, Green Bay, the game over, all those are probably good looks.
Right, let's get us on to the AFC. We chatted on the NFC for a good 20 minutes. We'll be here for the hour again if we keep going from there.
Wait, really quickly, I did pull up the paper with the specific numbers in terms of the actual. I didn't have to pay. I found a different link, so I don't have to pay.
I was going to say, if it's behind a paywall, you have to.
Yeah, no. I mean, the mean temperature advantage for the highest quartile of the cold acclimatization advantage is 23-degree advantage. So this is going to be greater than a 23-degree advantage. Yeah. And the mean temperature there is 32.6 degrees. In those games, there were 347, and the forecast error was 2.4 points. This is 81 to 2004, I guess. So the home covered 56.5%. P-values less than the p-value is 0.0079, and it's also significant the second highest quartile as well. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's obviously not a huge sample, but it's telling, and it would be interesting to update that data. But I would need to go scrape like actual temperatures from cities.
Weather.
Yeah.
That's good to note. For sure. I mean, that's significant. I wonder. Yeah, the great question is, over the last 15 years, have they improved travel? Have they improved, amenities, sideline amenities and stuff like that for teams enough for that to be gone away with?
That's a good point.
Probably not as much as we think, though. Probably not as much as I said off the top of my head.
There weren't heated fields in the 1980s.
You don't have Joe Namath in a fur coat on the sidelines anymore.
Yeah. Well, and glove technology is different, like all that kind of stuff. I mean,
it's a fair point.
Better heaters.
Yeah.
Right.
But the fact that there was signal at one point is something.
Yeah.
Our AFC game, Buffalo Bills at Kansas City Chiefs, and this one, plenty of talking points again, some notable movements for obvious reasons, and the uncertainty over Mahomes. Pinnacle actually went up as a pick, and I think elsewhere actually made the Bills favourites. It's now -3 on the Chiefs. The total is up to 51 after opening up at 49.5. A case could probably be made for both teams, but I don't know. It's that question mark still, isn't it? Like the news is positive over Mahomes, but do you risk it? Was anyone in early? Has anyone got in since? How are we feeling about this one?
I feel like I'm free rolling taking Buffalo here. So the question is, what's the probability Mahomes is out? I think if you think it's more than like 20% or limited, then if it's more than 20%, I think it's a fantastic bet on the Bills, basically. Because I think with Mahomes, I basically make the number KC minus 2.2. I have these teams very, very close to even. And so it comes down to what's your home field advantage, basically. I have the Chiefs like a third of a point better. What's your home field advantage? And so basically, I mean, I love the Bills side. I took +3 yesterday. I think because what's the line like if Mahomes doesn't play, right? I mean,
three the other way,
and he's got the net. It's not just a concussion. It's like it's not a. I mean, it didn't look like a concussion on the field I mean, you saw the wooziness that looked like a concussion, but I was like, where's the impact to the head? I guess it was sort of the back of the helmet.
Well,
maybe
I didn't think there was impact. Like when I first saw it, when I saw the replay, and then as I saw him get up, his leg gave out. I thought it was a leg injury. I thought like, oh, his knee's done. Like the way that leg went out. And then you see it, and it's like, oh, he's woozy. What is?
Yeah.
So I've watched it back. And it was the choking, or if there was some nerve damage. So it's tough to guess. Just the fact that they're hanging this 3 makes me think that your 20% is high by about a multiple of 4.
Maybe
that they're putting this out. I believe it's like 95.5 at this point that he plays. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
I don't think they would have hung a line if this was a regular season game right now.
Well, I mean, limits wise, I haven't actually looked, so I don't know whether those limits are potentially dropped down a little bit just to kind of cover off in that aspect. But obviously, it's there for the taking if people want to.
We took +3 minus 103, I think, at Pinnacle yesterday.
Yeah, the thing about it, I agree with Rufus's reasoning 100%, and here's why. Last year when Mahomes got injured, there were legitimate sources that were saying Mahomes is good enough to play in the Green Bay game the week immediately following it. And for that reason, when they played Green Bay, they were like +4.5. I took the +4.5, thinking almost the exact same thing that Rufus said, which is like the tail risk here. If you're going to lay the points with Green Bay or just simply not take the points with Kansas City, and that one game was immense, right? Because, Mahomes, we have him worth somewhere between, it depends because Reed is a confounder here, but like Mahomes is worth something like 7 to 10 points more than a replacement level quarterback, depending upon who the coach is. And so like and the other thing that's different about this game, even relative to Mahomes' knee last year, this isn't a decision Kansas City gets to make. He has to be cleared by an independent neurologist. And like, I don't know, I'm not going to diagnose his injury or whatever. He also had a toe injury that looked non-trivial, but
nobody's talking about the foot.
Kansas City does not get to control this situation. Like it is left 100% to the independent neurologist. And even if that percentage, like, look, and again, this is coming from somebody again who has Kansas City exposure for the Super Bowl, AFC, and all that. Like, if you're getting even 3, you're getting that 8-9% that lands on 3. Like that, to me, like you have to take it because the moment if they're what happens if they say, okay, Mahomes hasn't passed the protocol and it's Wednesday, where's the number then? 2.5. And then if they say Thursday hasn't passed the uncertainty is only going to grow in my estimation because of the nature of these, these concussion things.
And what's the number of Mahomes is full strength?
Well, I mean, so they hung up 3.5.
You think it's 4?
I think it goes the other way.
I don't think it's 4.
I don't think it goes the other way in this particular game. Like, let's say they clear him tomorrow. I don't think it goes to 4. They had it at 3.5 after Buffalo won on Saturday. I think Kansas City played well enough against Cleveland in the first 2.5 quarters to possibly like push the narrative out to 4. I mean, I think fundamentally this is a 3.5.
Yeah, there were look aheads, and granted, low limit look aheads, but there were look aheads at 5.5. I would have it 4. I mean, I'd probably agree with you that maybe it bumps, but I mean, even at 3.5, it probably doesn't get to 4 because there is resistance at 3.5. Like that, plenty of people would be happy to bet that.
There are tons of people.
Going 3 to 3.5, I'm basically paying like it's a little over 4%, over 4%, basically in terms of the value there.
The toe injury would probably be getting plenty of buyback on 3.5. So you're probably right. It doesn't move much.
Well, and I also think that like, and this could be taught. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like preseason, more people were buying into Kansas City than Buffalo. Buffalo's a team that people are finally starting to come around on, right? Like, and so you get to this position. I feel like, again, as somebody who has doubted the Bills repeatedly, 3 is a gift here because of the Mahomes uncertainty, but also like, just the way that like I'm balanced out here. I don't know. Like, I agree with Rufus that there's so much uncertainty associated with Mahomes that I can't lay it with Kansas City here. And, I think Buffalo is giving you sort of a like they could probably cover this 3 in many cases, at full strength.
Right. And I think like I actually would lean Buffalo at +3 with full strength Mahomes. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, Buffalo has been the better team this season by the predicted metrics. Obviously, priors do matter, but I mean, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I have a hard time reconciling like the last 8 weeks of the Kansas City season. Just reconciling how they played and how those box scores ended up with how good the team truly could play, has played, will play, can play. So I still make it 4. I took a small position on the 3. You're making me doubt myself with just thinking of the math. Well, it's because of the high uncertainty of it. But I mean, not going tinfoil on this. But man, I mean, Goodell has done. You can say he's an independent neurologist. I can see, and I made a joke about this. Like in my joke, it was Andy Reid doing it, but I could see Goodell's crony walking up to the independent neurologist and casually dropping that he knew where that guy's kids went to school, and here's a picture of your wife. It would behoove the league for this concussion protocol to be passed.
As a fan of the team, like that was the saddest part about Sunday was not only like, do we have to grind out this game with Chad Henne, but it was also like, do we have to watch an AFC championship game with Chad Henne against Josh Allen? Like that, a huge mismatch there. But I don't know. The fact is these two teams are very similar. Defensively, I think they do a lot of the same stuff. I think Kansas City is actually more talented than Buffalo is defensively. But on the offensive side of the ball, like other than the quarterback position, I think it's kind of a wash. Like no one in the league can cover Travis Kelce. No one in the league can cover Stephon Diggs. Tyreek Hill is a mismatch as well, but the other receivers for Buffalo are tremendous too. Davis, Beasley got an all-pro vote, and John Brown. Like this is 2 teams that are relatively equally yoked. Both teams have great coaches. I think Andy's a little bit better than McDermott, but the Mahomes thing, even if he does play, like we've seen it before where a guy's just a little bit off. You have the toe injury that reduces one of the things he does really well, which is his mobility. He's probably not going to run as much if there's concussions are known to be, things that can be, that more highly correlated from one to another. So like I'd like to see Kansas City win because I'm a fan, but it's certainly not something where even if Mahomes plays, I think it's a lock in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think
it's a smart franchise too. You wonder how they weigh this. Like it would be nice to win a Super Bowl this year, but the contract we just gave this guy and how we're structured going forward, like, is it worth risking him for this one run? You do get, if you win this game, you get 2 weeks for him to probably fully recover, especially in the toe injury. And I think the toe injury is being underplayed. If it's turf toe, like people have said, like that's a nasty one. And that can, you can say his running, his scrambling, designed runs, but that's going to affect the way you drop back. It's going to affect the way you plant and throw. I mean, that can affect his whole game. I'm not really making a strong case for this position.
Well,
I hope I'm wrong.
There was a run, I think, where he picked up a few yards, but I mean, he was literally like dragging his foot behind him.
Well, and you look at it in the past. I mean, teams with running quarterbacks, the smart teams will sort of save them for the high leverage games and situations, right? I mean, you're not gonna dive head first, like going for a 4th down with your quarterback against the Bengals. If you're a smart team, at least. And so, I mean, in the past, like Mahomes has had bigger rushing games in the Super Bowl, he had a bigger rushing game, and then he thankfully lost all those yards on the last kneel downs, the negative 10-yard kneel down, which saved my ass. But I do think that's one of the aspects of like Reid being better against better teams, or, in the fact that he'll know that he can deploy Mahomes running the ball more. And he did he had that option run, or it wasn't even an option. It was just a, sprint right, I guess.
The
first touchdown of the game.
They ran that play in the Super Bowl too against San Francisco. Like, to your point, Rufus.
Yeah. And
just one final question from me about the Chiefs and all this talk about the injury. It's dominated everything. And I guess one thing, or one sort of recurring theme we've had, is this idea of the Chiefs struggling to cover, the question of, can they go into third, fourth gear or whatever it might be? Is it now, like Eric, you're kind of talking about supporting the team and being a fan? Are people not worried too much now about covering the spread, and they're now more thinking about like they've just got to win the game? I mean, obviously this is a betting show, but the kind of the discussion that's going on, it's simply about can they win, not can they cover.
Well, and again, this is, it's sort of, and this is the struggle that people that model football have, is like, how do you, Kansas City might be just this strange team where like, you optimize using all of your past data, and this ends up being the proper decay coefficient to use for play success relative to score differential in time. But there might be a situation where like Andy Reid or whatever is so well informed about like ending games with completions, that like maybe that doesn't apply necessarily to Kansas City. I know that's a silly thing to say, but like football is a small sample game. We've also haven't seen Kansas City this would be tied with the lowest spread that they've had with Tampa Bay and with New Orleans. Both of those games they ended up, I believe, pushing right at the 3. So, that again, I think it's somewhat end pointing, but after a while, like the fact that they haven't won a game by a full touchdown in 2.5 months does give rise to some skepticism.
Yeah. And last narrative-y thing, and it's a narrative-y thing that has actually shown minor signal, especially early rounds, early careers, but it's still like a very young quarterback who has made a lot of mistake throws that he just hasn't been punished for, especially over the second half of the season, in a huge spot on the road with some fans. Like if Josh Allen doesn't compose himself, it might not matter, what the number is.
Oh, you were talking about, I thought you were talking about Mahomes for a second, then until you said on the road, because Mahomes is a young quarterback who has made some throws that should have been intercepted that have not also.
Yeah, no, and to your point, like the one, gosh, I'm trying to think, a couple weeks back, maybe it was the second last week of the season there, or the Miami game possibly, he had a couple that went unpunished, especially down around the goal line. So it's funny that out of the 2 games, this might not be the better game, which is wild if you said that to me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many talking points across both of the games, and look, we could be here all day sort of talking about it and analysing what the markets are doing and stuff like that. But I know you guys are very busy, so we'll wrap it up for today. I just want to say thanks to Eric, Rufus, and Andy for coming on, and obviously we'll be back next week where we're talking about the Super Bowl. So we'll see you next time. And if you are betting, all of the odds are available on pinnacle.com. Best of luck with any bets, and remember to always gamble responsibly.